Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbaugh. The thing I remember most about Lisa Ko's first novel, The Leavers, from back in 2018, isn't the wrenching mother son story or the explorations of immigration and identity. Instead, it was how Ko treated the main character playing crappy indie rock shows in crappy New York City venues, and showed how subcultures are just as integral a part of a person as someone's citizenship status or your relationship with your mom. Because what is a subculture other than an opportunity for a connection with other people, right? Ko's new book, Memory Peace, is a much larger scale than The Leavers. We're in the past and we're going into the future. We're dealing with an authoritarian state and a dystopic future. But in this interview with Here Now's Deepa Fernandes, Ko says that the antidote for all that is connection with other people. That's ahead.
Support for NPR and the following message come from our sponsor, Whole Foods Market. Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the Hot Grill Summer event through July 16th, with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
Lisa Ko's acclaimed debut novel, The Leavers, explored the bonds between parent and child, both biological and adoptive. It was a finalist for the 2017 National Book Award. Her follow-up, Memory Peace, takes a wider view, looking at the bonds of friendship over the decades and how society itself changes, and perhaps not for the better. Again, the book is Memory Peace, and Lisa Ko joins me now. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, Lisa, your novel spans the lifetime of three Asian American women. We meet them as angsty, alienated teens in the 1980s. Then we meet them again in the 1990s as creative, successful women, yet still somewhat on the margins. Giselle is a performance artist, Jackie is a coder in tech, and Ellen is a community activist. How did you conceive of these three characters? I'm wondering, do they resemble people in your life or maybe somewhat you?
I think they both resemble me and people in my life, and both don't. Like my characters, I grew up also in the 80s as a child of immigrants with this myth of American exceptionalism, and I moved to New York City in the 90s and worked in the early .com industry, just like my character Jackie. And I've just really seen so much about how gentrification and other changes have affected the kind of choices that we can make about our lives. So when I started writing it, I was just thinking a lot about things like financial responsibilities and family obligations and how, we just never really talk about this enough, but how things like access to low rent or, a partner with a high-paying job can affect, the kind of art it's possible for you to make or even your ability to make art. And it just made me think fondly about these days of childhood creativity that I had, creating imaginary worlds with my friends before the adult obligations and expectations of career came along. And I just started writing about these characters who were childhood collaborators, thinking a lot about the friendships I'd had in my life of people I grew up with. We had this shared experience that has really shaped us.
And I love the format. The book is in three parts, and each third is narrated by one of your main characters, one of the women, at a different point in their lives. What inspired you to write this way? Because you're advancing time through their lives, but at each point it's a different character.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking a lot about how Jackie, Giselle, and Ellen have these different kinds of work and ambitions that are also very interconnected. And how, I wanted to look at how those industries and those scenes really overlapped and how things in the 90s kind of foreshadowed how we live today and how things might be 20 years in the future. And I think just starting to write about their childhoods and then jumping forward into, the pre-9/11 .com era where there was this rush of tech optimism, it became a moment that felt very ripe for fiction in the way that it feels both absurd now and a little ominous in terms of what's happened with tech since then. And I think anytime I start writing about the past, like it's inevitable to think about what's changed since then and how did we get from then to now and how might that affect what happens in the future. And then so I found myself sort of wanting the book's format to mimic that experience of what's changed and what might change through my lifetime, moving from this familiar childhood setting to Y2K and to the 2040s.
Your book is also a critique in some way of mainstream stereotypes of Asian Americans. Now, Ellen, the character who is the housing activist, she has some pretty steep critiques of Asian Americans, that they're assimilationist, and when young people protest, it's over the lack of representation in Hollywood. Her life has been far from a stereotype. She's lived in a squat for much of her life in the East Village in Manhattan. She ran a garden co-op that aimed to have people live off what they grow and distribute food rather than sell food. Her life is just a very kind of anti-capitalist critique of identity politics. And I'm wondering if you see any of your own life in Ellen.
I think definitely her section of being somebody who is living in New York City in the future is something that I wanted to explore in writing her part. I was writing her section in 2020 and 2021 and just sort of imagining and fearing, what would it be like to stay in New York over time? What might happen to the city?
But there's also reflection in that last part of the book on, life that has been lived. I was particularly struck by, it's told from Ellen's perspective when she's in her 70s. And there was this one moment where she remembers this direct action that she and Jackie and Giselle took, where they broke into a warehouse of the exploitative delivery company that Jackie was working for. They steal food, they go give it to people for free. It seems so radical when they did it. But years later, Ellen reflects, and this is what she says: "But no one remembered the old Ellen or cared about the work we did. In the end, it didn't matter much." Oof. It was such a harsh reflection to have when at the time the work mattered so much. Talk to me a little bit about that kind of look back reflection. And is that kind of a commentary on what we all might do? Like, this here and now matters so much to us right now, but in the end, it doesn't really matter?
I hope it does matter. And I think the book is hopefully saying that it does matter. It's sort of looking at the different ways that memory plays across the characters' lives. And I think for Ellen in the future, memory has become something that feels dangerous and a liability, just in the way that destroying memory is used as a way to assert power, right? Erasing history or censorship. And for Ellen to sort of remember despite those things becomes like a source of strength that she can draw from.
Can we talk about the 2040s, Lisa?
Sure.
Not in too much detail, but oh my gosh, it's terrifying. There are mentions of like massacres by government actors, forced evictions, mandatory jobs. It just seems like a very authoritarian state. And, I wonder if you think we're on that path.
I think in a way I was trying to write as a way to explore my fears of how bad things could potentially get, from a logical standpoint of thinking of all the overlapping crises we're looking at today, but also using the novel as a way to provide an antidote to like being frozen in those fears, right? So it's sort of like a visionary future that's not necessarily a utopia, but one that makes room for both reality and possibility, where the characters can connect and create in times of both heartbreak and joy.
And, of course, this is fiction. This is coming straight out of your imagination. But, I think there's also a little bit of hope in that, because I think for many of us who are parents, we do worry about the world that our kids and their kids might grow up in a world where there's climate disasters. We're looking around the world today, an increasing leaning towards authoritarianism. And I wonder how you find hope in those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think it's sort of making room for the reality of what's happening, not necessarily, ignoring the truth of what's going on. But I think that the book is also really suggesting that the antidote to this feeling of hopelessness and powerlessness is connection, right? And is collaboration, that sort of friendship and the preservation of memory in so many different formats, which the characters show throughout their stories.
And memory, of course, the book is called Memory Piece. That comes from one of Giselle's pieces of performance art. And so you reflect on the nature of memory throughout the novel. Leave us, Lisa, with a thought about what you want people to take away from Memory Piece, maybe about our own memories and our own, how memory is a part of our own lives.
Yeah, I think that As somebody who's been a very veteran journal keeper, in some ways I relate to Giselle's performance practice of writing everything down.
Okay, got it. Now we know where that one came from.
Right.
But could you do what she did with your journals, Lisa? I'm not going to give it away. Could you do that?
Actually, I have. I mean, not quite in a public performance, but I have gotten rid of a lot of my old journals. I think there's a lot of power in archives, in memory, especially when memory is being destroyed, I think, by outside forces. And it's such an important thing to be able to understand and learn from the past in order to dream a new future.
Lisa Ko's novel is Memory Peace. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Sony Pictures Classics presenting Daddy-O, a new film written and directed by Christy Hall, starring Dakota Johnson as a young woman who hails a cab and Sean Penn as a seasoned cabbie, in which they both take a journey of personal and private discovery on a trip from JFK to NYC. Variety says every aspect of Daddy-O is designed to spark conversation. Daddy-O opens only in theaters nationwide Friday, June 28th. Support for NPR and the following message come from IXL Online. Is your child asking questions on their homework you don't feel equipped to answer? IXL Learning uses advanced algorithms to give the right help to each kid, no matter the age or personality. One subscription gets you everything. One site for all the kids in your home, pre-K to 12th grade. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And NPR listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/NPR.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Vuori. Jump into a new perspective on performance apparel. Vuori makes products that stand the test of time and hope to inspire others to live vibrant, healthy lives, empowering your best life in clothing that can be worn for just about any activity from running to yoga. Visit Vuori.com/NPR to receive 20% off your first purchase and enjoy free shipping on any U.S. orders over $75. Discover the versatility of Vuori clothing.